An entrepreneur has to be absolutely relentless about their purpose. It is not about making money. It's not about a new career job. It's not a new position. It's not about any of that. It's about being relentless and having the diligence and the tenacity and the emotional intelligence to make it through a lot of this crap.
Welcome to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. Thanks for tuning in, however and from wherever you're tuning in with us today. My name is Caleb Talley, Startup Junkie team, joined by my co-host, Daniel. How's it going, Daniel?
It's going well on this very rainy day in Fayetteville.
It's wet in Northwest Arkansas, but we're still having fun anyway. We are joined by our friend Eric Howerton, co-founder. You probably know him as the co-founder of White Spider. He's a serial entrepreneur working on some cool new projects. Eric, thank you for joining us.
Great. It's great to be here. Appreciate you guys. Yeah, it's coming down out there, man. I mean, I couldn't do my usual speed limit on the interstate. Had to slow down a little bit.
Take the canoe, kayak down 49.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about what you're working on, Eric. What I know you've got AdFury.ai, co-founder of. Tell us a little bit about that. Give us the elevator pitch and some of the other projects. As a serial entrepreneur, Jeff might say a shiny object guy. I like to do a bunch of different things.
I like that.
What's going on? What's keeping you up at night?
Like a nasty raccoon. I can't stop but grab the Oreo and I get trapped. I mean, that's basically the synopsis of.
I like that better. The raccoon.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's literally, I'm like trapped now, you know. So AdFury is the most recent startup that we're doing. I'm co-founding that with my former partner at White Spider. We rejoined forces to start up AdFury.ai. And basically it is for digital display and video search ads within retail media networks. So that might be a little confusing to a lot of folks, but in the retail world, in the CPG world, the supplier seller world, it's pretty understandable. In synopsis, retailers, such as Target, Amazon, Walmart, et cetera, over time have discovered that their first party audience, their shoppers, their customers that are coming in and buying products, they have a lot of data with them, right? And there's a lot of exposure to those customers that are shopping, trying to make transactions within those retailer environments. And so they've recognized, and it's really, started by a couple of them, but it's been recognized that, hey, you can advertise while they're in that shopping journey, which is kind of at the bottom of the funnel of the journey, right? And so in essence, the retailer has now started thinking themselves as a media type company, because they have the placements and platform to expose new products, new brands to the customer in that shopping experience. A lot of what's been happening is what they call sponsored search. So an advertiser, like any brand, can go in and bid on certain keywords, and then they have their products appear in that grid. And they're trying to interrupt the customer shopping journey, and they're trying to place their products before other ones that get populated on the grid. Sponsored search, though, just pulls in, basically, you'll see them, very familiar for everybody. Like when you do that search, say it's, purified drinking water, and you're on a retailer and you have 100 products that populate from that, you'll see some of them that in that grid that say sponsored underneath. That's a sponsored search. We don't really deal with that at AdFury. So I told that long story to tell you that's not what we do.
It's exactly what we don't do.
But in that grid or on that page, and at different experiences, you'll see additional advertisements that are like image-based. Like you'll see a
panel. A
skyscraper, or a leaderboard that you can see the image of the product, and it looks like an advertisement, your typical image ad, display ad. That's the display ad. So we do mess with that. And then there's also video that might pop up as well based upon that search query. And we do play in that field too. And so it's really in that creative space that our software as a service, self-service software powered by artificial intelligence, that we're able to create more of those ads based on keywords. And so the problem is that a creative is not able to create 50 different ads with call to actions or headings relative to the keyword that somebody might enter. They can only really create one ad, and then, it's used across all these different keywords. Well, our system allows them to have 50 ads automatically. And we can also, retailers have really specific criteria, like they're like, this one's 100 pixels wide, about 50 pixels tall, whatever it might be. Our system automatically generates those. And so it's about kind of going long tail and doing things that advertisers not able to do today because of the time it takes and the workload. And so our system automates that process. And so what we're hoping to do, going back to the sponsored search, we're hoping to make display and video search be as easy and automatic as sponsored search is. Because in sponsored search, you just got to bid on the keyword and the placement's automatically pulled from the product detail page. Or we hope to make that as easy on display and video as that is. How confusing is that?
There's so much variability to it, I guess, when you're like what it needs to determine for that ad.
So there's two factors, right? There's relevancy and then there's workload, right? Efficiency. And we're trying to make that efficiency and effectiveness greater, for ad agencies specifically. They're the ones that are really, they have the responsibility to make sure that their clients have good return on investment of their ad spend. They're working across the entire content supply chain, the creative process, whatever it might be. And they're the ones buying the media. And so it's a really hard job. We have a lot of respect for those agencies on the creative side and the media buying side. Our tool is specifically designed to help them become more efficient and effective with the work. And they call it kind of production type work, right? We're not in the space of our job's not to come up with a really awesome creative. That's the agency's job. Our job is to scale that awesome creative into these different formats and these keywords so it's more relevant and to try to make that workflow go faster. And it's really about places they haven't been able to go before, not necessarily doing what they already are doing. AI and self-service software just allow for that to be possible.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
I was going to say that y'all founded that in 2024, 2025.
25, right at the beginning of the year.
Oh, wow. So how's it been going? We're just 4 months in.
Yeah, about 4 months in. We basically have developed the software. We're in a alpha testing mode. We're just finishing that up, moving into beta launch. It's been really intense. Here's the reality: is everybody on our team, not just myself and JS, but we got people on our team, our developers. We know what we're doing. This is not foreign territory as far as a retail media network. It's not foreign territory to understand the agency's problem and the brand's problem. We know that industry really well and their problems really. And this is a really specific, and that reason it's kind of hard to explain is because it's such a small little box, right? It's highly niched. And it's a territory that we know that can be expedited. And there's so much ceiling to grow. And so when you look at sponsored search, it's it might be capped out at a lot of these retailers, right? Because it's so easy. It's easy for the retailer. It's easy for the agency. It's easy for the brand. You just click buttons and go. It's not that simple, but it is kind of that simple at the end of the day. But display may be only at 20% capacity on the retailer media network. And video may be only at 1%. The reason why they're at those 20 and 1% is because of the pain that it takes to create the creative and manipulate the creative, scale that creative across those keywords for that relevancy and other industry insights. And especially on the video side. As we know, we're sitting here on a video. It's not easy. You just don't click a button and video appears and it's published and it has all these differences to it. It takes a lot of work. We're trying to automate that process so that then we can lift that ceiling for the retailer. We lift the ceiling for the brand, to get more visibility on their product within the retailer media network. And then we lift the ceiling for the agency to get higher return on their ad spend. It allows them to work really efficiently and go down into the weeds to where really no one's been able to go before. And so that little niche is something that our team really knows about, right? So we know how to attack the problem. Basically, we don't have to sit around and wonder and do all kinds of theoretical equations about what's the problem, what's the pain points. We know what to go get to work on. And so our software is built, it's working. Of course, in the beta, you're still discovering functionality and a lot of other things. But we plan to kind of publicly launch and accept subscriptions here in the next 30 days, I imagine.
Yeah. So it's a niche problem, kind of a niche solution.
Totally.
Is your ideal customer, is that niche as well? Or is it kind of just all retailers?
So no, so we got multiple markets, right? And I mean, we identify those different audiences and markets, but on the retailer side, really, we're looking for mass retailers that have established retail media networks in motion or in place. Some of those might be self-service or managed service. So some of the retailers are highly sophisticated technologically, like our favorite retailer here in the area. They have these automated processes, APIs, and tech stacks that they've built around the retail media network, right? Basically, like any kind of other media publisher, think of a New York Times, right? Like you can easily click in and start advertising, or you can talk to somebody and do a bigger plan. Some retailers are set up that way to where they're sophisticated, but then there's other ones that are just now starting to get into it, right? Because a lot of times, it's not a very age-old thing for a retailer. Their primary point of their business has been historically selling products, merchandising. Well, in comes e-com, traffic, right? And then they're like, oh man, I mean, we can advertise. We can build revenue on advertising. We know of one major, I would call them a software company more than a retailer, but they kind of started the trend to where their revenue line is predominantly based upon that ad revenue, not the sale of products. And so you've had this interruption in the market for retailers, and all their other retailers are going, oh, crap, we better get in the game, because they're getting squeezed on margins on their product sales and not making any ad revenue. So that's kind of this whole new market that's risen up in the media space, is retail media networks. Right now, you're seeing the same thing happen with travel agencies doing the same thing. Oh, we're a media company, not just a agency. Or the financial institutions are like, oh, you can advertise and get exposed to people that we already have subscriptions with. And so everybody's into kind of this stuff, right? They're trying to find new revenue lines. And so that's on the retailer side, the niche. Like we want to talk to retailers that are in that process of thinking or building or have already built. So we can kind of help them across A to Z on that mindset. If you're a small retailer locally, probably not a fit for us, unless, you got a fantastic audience and you're building a media network, but it's mostly mass retailers that have major audiences to them, like, lots of people coming online.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands. So,
yeah.
On the niche side, on the agency side, it's really creative agencies. So, they've got a lot of great ones out there that are building the creative ads for advertising. We can help them on that very end of the road, bottom of the funnel within the RMN, Retail Media Network, to scale those ads out. Again, we're not creating anything. We're manipulating, we're scaling. And then you have your media buyers that are actually in charge of the budgets on behalf of their clients. And so they want to spend their money wisely, get a higher return on ad spend, sell more units, and prove that back. That we make their job a lot easier, because they can target, they can use the creative that's in the system, they can manipulate it, change headings and subheadings, and they can abide by brand style guides and the creative. And so everybody kind of wins there. And then, of course, your brands, your one-piece suppliers or your third-party sellers that we're helping out increase their return on ad spend and their efficiency as well. And then finally, the customer ends up winning, right? The shopper themselves, right? Because if you've ever been to, any kind of .com and you're sitting there typing in keywords for purified drinking water, and then you have ads that show up that's, not purified drinking water, right? Like you get frustrated, you bounce, you exit, you go to a different retailer, you disregard the brand that was advertised. And so relevancy is a high point. Customers and shoppers expect that when I type something in, that product that's being promoted to me is highly relevant. The whole, like the book Don't Make Me Think was written, I think, back in the 90s for, UX for web and e-com. It's becoming more and more powerful. Like the more information, more AI, the more technology, the more tools, the more robots are doing our thinking, all this stuff that's going on. Relevancy is becoming a higher and higher expectation for the customer, because, like they don't have the time. They're bouncing back and forth from text messages to docs to emails to social, and they're trying to do a shopping experience, and they want to be exposed and interrupted to things that only really matter to them.
Unless you're me, and then I'm like, ooh, what's this?
Right. Yeah. Unless you have somebody that's just like legitimately just out there trying to discover new products. But I don't know who really necessarily does that on a regular basis.
Don't talk to my wife. Though.
Right. Yeah. But those retargetings like you'll experience on social media is like if you click on something, the next thing you know, you start seeing ads everywhere.
Inundated. Yeah.
But at least it's relevant.
Yeah.
right? And you kind of I've purchased based on those things. You know, they can become annoying, but our goal is to make that one-to-one relationship.
And you talked about, this is a good segue, you talked about kind of having an intimate knowledge of that problem, of this niche kind of area. So that segues well into, you know, Eric's origin story. How do you have such an intimate knowledge of that problem, and kind of where has that journey been?
Yeah, so it didn't start out that way when I was younger or in college. I mean, I studied photojournalism. Graduated with a degree in that.
I study journalism too.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, congratulations. How about you?
Not me, man.
Okay, no, you're out.
Sorry.
You're out, Danny.
Entrepreneurship over here.
Okay,
So,
well, that's fair.
yeah.
It's pretty broad.
Yeah, really broad.
It's
Yeah.
not like photojournalism.
Yeah.
No.
No, it's
I was the print
niche.
journalism guy in the back there, like, you know, amongst all the broadcasts.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing here?
Well, get out of here,
dying,
man.
right? No, yeah.
So I mean, I studied content, and so I mean, like when I look at my career, like the niche that I've been in is in content, right? Storytelling, and that comes in many different forms. Technology's just allowed us to have, you know, even more storytelling opportunities. And by the way, just to get on a little soapbox, I could get really, I get upset when I see journalism schools shutting down journalism programs. They're not adapting. They're not evolving fast enough. Like the reality to it is journalism and writing and content is more important than it ever has been. Even with AI coming in, I mean, you got to have people that are steering the prompt, steering the direction.
They are the editor of that content. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's really obvious, you know, as we've evolved in it, but they just don't. And so the application of how to ask the right questions, what's the most important bullet point of this entire story, right? Like all those things, highly applicable through my career. So, you know, it put me into ad agency work. It put me into print publishing and distribution. Then I got into web design and digital marketing. Then I got into e-commerce. Then we started White Spider, and really it wasn't until White Spider that we'd have been doing business for probably about 5 years or 6 years. And we're very much a full service integrated content marketing agency. That's what we used to call ourselves back in the early days. And then we knew a lot about the e-com space, and we knew that the product detail page on any e-com site is the ultimate landing page of planet Earth. And so if there's a message to get out to any advertiser, media, I mean, like every dollar that you spend on that PDP is like where all the rubber meets the road, right? And so we recognized that of being e-com experts. And one day I looked and noticed how one of the major brands on a major retailer had the worst product detail page in the world. And I'm like, what? You know, and it was pretty close to us. And I was like, hey, all these people are out down the road. And so we started going down there and helping and just over time, just, you know, got to know this environment and then and how this business works. And then we developed a software to help us with our efficiency internally. And then we started selling that. Turned into a SaaS company, and then this was all at White Spider, and we ended up exiting in 2021. Got purchased by a public company out of the UK, who then kind of divested and sold its digital arm to Omnicom, one of the big conglomerate agencies out there. So that was that journey. That was like an overnight success, 12 years in the making kind of thing. Right?
Yeah.
And just still a bit from Sam Walton. But I mean, it's, it's just funny how like the industry will take you, right? And I mean, my encouragement is there was no way in the world under the sun that I ever thought that I would be, you know, dealing with what I dealt with, but it was all content related, on that product detail page and everything we're doing and advertising that we're doing, telling stories. But because we saw opportunities, you really try to navigate and find these little micro opportunities that nobody's really attuned to the growth of it. So when I think of a niche, I see it. Well, I see it. Obviously, there's an opportunity here, but the immediate thing is I think about, like in the case with AdFury, very small niche, but how big can that thing get, right? Like, what's the scalability? And then I think that's really the magic, right? Because that's what we did at White Spider. It was like, man, like this thing's going to grow, and we're confident about that. There is a really significant problem going on at the retailer, at the brand level, at the agency level, and we can solve that. Like, and everybody else is like, hey, you need to go do this, do that. And we just stuck to our guns and went really deep, the mile deep, inch wide versus the mile wide, inch deep. And I think a lot of folks get trapped in that mile wide statement. Leave that for the big boys, right? Like leave that for the public companies. Yeah. Same thing with artificial intelligence, right? Like, man, don't try to create an LLM.
Yeah.
And that's what AdFury's kind of model is. We're not creating large language models. Mm-hmm. We're fine-tuning the best in class. And we have an orchestration and a flow that uses them so that we can adapt and evolve really quickly to the market. And I would also recommend, like, especially in today's time, a lot of confusion. Like, I even sat on it for a couple of months, about a year ago. Artificial intelligence gaining its popularity, and you're like, oh my God, man, I'm not going to have a job, right? All these fears that come in from the media, which is why you shouldn't really watch media much. But the fears of media, fears of peers, fears of the workforce, all this crap. But if you really stop and just think about what's going on, how do you leverage, how do you utilize the new tech? How do you find your place? And it just takes a little bit of, isolation and critical thinking, and alone time. And what I discovered is like, kind of hit me. I'm like, man, why can't I just, like, it's the same principle. Like, do I need to create, in order to be relevant in this market, like back in the cell phone time, do I have to create the cell phone towers and the cell phones and the software and all this other stuff? And no, if you know how to use the freaking phone really well, and then you build a system around where you can, if you put all your eggs in the BlackBerry basket and they go out of business, then you're kind of screwed. Like, you got to be able to adapt, to the new things that come out. And that's how we kind of built AdFury in a way, is that we're very, very adaptable. Like, speed to adaptation is a big deal too. Like, I mean, I'm not talking like, 4.0 comes out and, it takes us 4 months to embrace it. Hell no, man. You got to embrace that like that day.
Yeah. You got to start tinkering in there right away.
You do. And you have to turn it, you have to execute it, you have to promote it, and it's just, you got to get in this speed engine to it. And AI allows you to be if you use AI, it allows you to be as fast as AI.
Yeah. And it definitely ties back into what you were saying earlier about, the journalists and the necessity for them to continue to be that editor. Everybody was worried about being replaced by this. And, if you're quick to adapt, you should be leveraging all of these things rather than being replaced by them.
Are you an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur looking to get plugged into the ecosystem? We host a ton of events designed for education, inspiration, and collaboration, from weekly meetups to quarterly events like pitch competitions and annual events like our marquee event, the Startup Crawl, which is the largest startup party in Arkansas. Check out our event page on our website, sign up, and we'll see you there.
And there's just like no special credential or certification to be adaptable.
Yeah.
It's about being humanistic and forward thinking and optimistic thinking, and quit listening to what the masses are saying. Like, you need to spend time and critically think about what's going on, and you'll find your little route, right? And there'll always be threats. There's always a problem. We're all in doom, right? I mean, just get used to it. Like, the problem is when you inundate yourself with that instead of looking at the opportunities, and then you just know, like, you're going to be okay. Like, as long as you stay adaptable, as long as you embrace, most of the new things, you should land on your feet in some way or another.
Yeah. What you were saying, Razi, a quote, I forgot who it was. Someone on our podcast last year said, it's not AI that's going to take jobs. It's going to be people who know how to use AI that are going to take jobs.
Yeah.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I think so, because all that is a demonstration of people that adapt and evolve with it. I think the people that sit around and worry and give up, like, it's like anything in life, right? Even if you're exercising, if you just quit exercising, that's when you fail. It's the quit. It's the decision to quit. It's becoming, just eating the fear, listening to others' opinion and what's going on. I mean, no one knows a freaking answer about anything tomorrow. Like, I mean, you could tell me, like, this is going to happen. I mean, like, I would call bullcrap on it and say, like, you don't know anything about what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't either. But, what I do know is what's happening today. And then I embrace the change. I take the time to see a little bit down the road and find out where I fit into this big mix.
And then it's kind of, as you're fitting into that big mix too, I think it's important to kind of highlight the fact that you're not creating solutions in search of problems along the way. These are, it's more kind of obsessions with those niche problems that you've identified because of that proximity to them. I think that's something that, we have conversations with through Startup Junkie entrepreneurs all the time. They kind of get married to, their notion of what they want to do in terms of what sort of solution they want to deploy or product or service they want to create. And a lot of times it's not married to a actual real life problem.
Yeah, and I would put into that, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs, we talk about a lot. I got a podcast called Big Talk About Small Business that I do with Mark Zweig, and I'm shamelessly promoting so I can hopefully, grab all your audience.
Don't watch television news, just listen to our two podcasts.
Yeah, 2 podcasts, that's all you need.
No, I mean, it's really, hey man, that's a whole nother discussion, but I firmly believe in that, like the new media that's out there, this being one of them. But, I think that a lot of folks go into business for a lot of reasons, right? And they got to be really careful. Is it you want a balanced lifestyle? Well, you're going to be unpleasantly surprised about that shit. You want, to have job security. I mean, I would say it's definitely more secure than being employed because you can kind of see, I'm about to go out and lose all my money and go out of business. I better do something about it. But it's not secure, right? There's a lot of risks. A lot of folks get into business because they want to make a lot of money. Yes. I would say that your richest people ever and today and future are the entrepreneurs. There is a lot of opportunity for that, but most of those folks did not get into entrepreneurship just to make a lot of money. Everyone's looking for freedom, for this easy road, this passive way in life. But it's not that. But if your ambition is to solve a problem and solve this market need, and that's what's driving you, it helps you to stay resilient through all the hurdles and ups and downs and peaks and valleys in entrepreneurism. And even the times where you don't get paid for months or that you're riding on credit cards for a couple of years and no one believes in you. Like you won't survive those ups and downs if your goal is to make money, because you'll see no money, you'll see negative money. You can be the smartest person on planet Earth and be an absolute failure as an entrepreneur. I've seen it. I've seen it happen time and time again. And there's nothing special about anything that I've done in order to get to where I'm at today with the success of one of the businesses really that I've had out of the hundreds. The key word that I have is resilience. And I just kept fighting and fighting. And that resilience was based upon this. There's a problem and I got to fix it. I don't know why I feel like I have to fix it, but somebody needs to fix it. Nobody else seems to be confident enough to go fix it. They, and they get blindsided by all these other different things like income, or I had a baby. Now what I do, I got to protect, all this kind of stuff. My number one mission in life was to fix the problem. And that's what drove me. And that's all I had. I'm not the smartest. I didn't really know what I was doing most of the time. I would just say yes. And then I would bleed to die to make sure I did it. And I kept my reputation and I didn't fail. And then even right now, I'm fortunate to have that success with one company. I got these other ones. I'm back in the same boat. It's like my risk profile has not decreased. It still is going to be as hard and requires much work, and it's just as high risk, and it's maybe even a little bit more than what it was before. And there's no guarantee. And I don't have some sort of smart genius plan that's going to give me better odds. The only thing I can do is see some problems a little bit more in the future and maybe prevent a lot of those sparks from becoming absolute freaking wildfires, in my life. So, but having that knowledge is even a little bit more scary, right? So you got to fight a lot with yourself and internally. Staying on tack with vision, that's why it's so important. You need to sit down, you need to have time by yourself. If you can practice the repetition, you're winning. I'm talking 30 minutes to an hour, hour and a half, where it's just you and a notebook. Use your freaking hand. Don't listen to YouTube all the time, but dedicate some time to what are your goals? Is your vision in life? What are your values? What are your virtues? All these things that you're thinking about you and why you're existing on this planet and what your purpose is. That time I have found to be the most absolute critical, and it's priority number one. Before, I send roses to my wife, before I spend quality time with my kid, that time with me is the most important. The problem is we get distracted and you don't spend enough time. I fight that, right? I didn't do it this morning. I didn't do it yesterday morning. but I think I did it on Monday for at least 45 minutes. And that value of 45 minutes keeps me focused on why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's a higher calling than just making freaking money. You know, it's even a higher calling than solving a market problem. Like, I am uniquely certified to do my specific thing on this earth before I die, and I can help solve this thing, and it has greater impact than myself. That's the study that I want to have. And that will keep you, it's not motivation, it keeps you focused on why you exist, because, you know, fear is rampant. You know, everybody's worried all the time, you know, and I worry too. It doesn't make you immune to it. It's just what you do in those times, right? Like, if somebody comes in and says, hey, we just lost our biggest account in our company, do you go, oh shit, we're out of business and everybody, you know, and what am I going to do? I'm going to die. Everyone's going to die. And, you know, and you catastrophize the situation, like, which anybody would respond that way. Like, I would be worried. But if I have practiced that alone time, and I will come back to the center, and I've already written it down, I can go reread it and say, okay, why am I doing what I'm doing? It's because of this greater calling. And then I can get realigned to that. And then these, you know, if you do have to quit the company, if it does die off, if people do lose jobs, you don't lose your purpose, you know? And so
it's not married to that.
No, exactly. And people, like, where the damage happens is when somebody loses and they get depressed and they
find their identity in that.
Role, and you just that spiral job, and then you don't wake up soon, and then you're not working, and then, you know, and all these things start happening, and, you know, we're all facing that demon, you know, that negative side of life. And I think that's the real damage. That's why, like, a lot of times I disagree with teaching entrepreneurism. Like, what more dangerous advice could one ever give if I told you should be an entrepreneur? I mean, dude, I could be setting you up, like, on my side, it might be beneficial, especially as an investor or something. Like, yeah, you should go do this, because guess what? As an investor, you know, I'm not one working in the weeds, and I know my risk tolerance, and I'm trying to play strategically, and I got all this thing on my side. But, you know, an entrepreneur that's not ready to handle the turmoil of running your business, you could literally put somebody into the deepest state of depression, and no one's here to watch out for you. I've never yet, in all my 20 years plus years experience in entrepreneurism, had anybody come to the table and say, I want to help you be successful. Not one freaking person. Not one person. Not one person. You know, and I'm sorry, but you got to understand that you are alone. It is up to you. That's why you have to have that one-on-one time. And just because other people want to be involved in what you're doing doesn't mean they want to help you. Because the second shit hits the fan, everybody's out the door and you're left with that bag, you know? And you have to have that reality. It took me a long time, I mean, years, decade, to realize, because I would live in this frustration. It's like, why don't I get help? You know, looks like so-and-so got this funding. Looks like so-and-so got this help. You know, why does the government keep, you know, want to, you know, send me this letter and make me pay penalties on taxes, and I can't even pay my bills? I mean, where's the government handout? You know, I mean, everybody's looking for that stuff. No one's there for that. So if you can have that reality, get over it, you at least get in reality, you focus on yourself, you have a greater calling and purpose, and then you know that gets you to work, and it's all on your shoulders, and you make it happen. But if you convince somebody to take that journey and they don't have those principles and practices in place, it could be a very devastating thing for an individual and the people in their family. I mean, we're not talking about, oh, they'll lose their income and they'll have to go find another job. That's the soft, easy, that's the convincing way of, don't worry about it, entrepreneur. If crap goes down, you're going to be okay. You can find another job. No. That's not the reality. Reality is that probably you will have to do that, but that's the easy part. The hard part is talking to your spouse and not getting a divorce. The hard part is when that happens, then you don't have time with your kids and your kids are distant from you. The hard part of that is, who did you borrow money from? Who have you been riding on that you can't pay back and now you're in debt? You know, the hard part is like, did you lose all your confidence in yourself and now you're in a spiral control and you don't think you're worth anything. So then you can't find another job because you don't even trust yourself and your own opinions anymore. I mean, an entrepreneur has to be absolutely relentless about their purpose. It is not about making money. It's not about a new career job. It's not a new position. It's not about any of that. It's about being relentless and having the diligence and the tenacity and the emotional intelligence to make it through a lot of this crap, because it's all your fault. It's not the investor's fault. It's not the government's fault. It's not the SBA's fault about how they wrote your business plan. It's not any of that. It's not your banker's fault. It's not your mom and dad's fault. It's your fault.
Yeah. And if you
Carry
don't,
that weight.
if you don't have that North Star ingrained in you and that level of resiliency, adversity is going to filter a lot of folks out. On the front end, I feel like, hopefully.
And you guys probably have experienced that. I mean, like, you get a lot of folks that are excited about an idea or a solution.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but are you the entrepreneur?
Exactly.
And you might also be the CEO of the biggest, brand or whoever in the world. And you have this fantastic idea, but man, are you ready to put it all on the line? I mean, that's why I think it's hard for investors. I would say it's really easy as an entrepreneur to go find investors. It's very hard for investors to go find good entrepreneurs. And that's something that I've actually talked with some of the folks on your team before, is like, where are the founders? How do you find a founder? How do you, a real founder?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not talking about a founder. I'm talking about an entrepreneurial founder.
Yeah.
The person,
a builder.
Somebody that's in class that they don't just not only have an idea, but they're like, dude, I got to do this. Like, all I can think about is this, and they're just like relentlessly, and they can't stop thinking about it. That's who I want to put money in. Somebody that'll bleed out, but then they got to have a lot of other qualifications too. They can't make short-sighted decision. They can't be too big and lofty, but they have to have vision. There's so much at risk to that. I don't think you can teach that to somebody,
especially out of a book. And you talk about teaching entrepreneurship, and I don't have any I guess perspective or experience of having been in that. No, you studied entrepreneurship, Daniel, but I know there are probably also a lot of professors and teachers and stuff that are teaching this out of a book, as opposed to a professor or an instructor or a mentor who's had that lived experience, who's gone that lonely path of entrepreneurship before and kind of has that perspective to share versus, the theory is in page, that sort of thing, just doesn't.
And I tell you what, I think about this a lot. It's funny in this topic. If I was to teach entrepreneurship, I would probably teach my class 80% with emotional intelligence and have psychology involved, and 20% on practicing certain things.
Yeah.
Because but we don't even have, we have 0% emotional intelligence involved. Like, where are the psychologists at? Why do you think the way that you think? Like, when you think of this, what's the catastrophic, confirmation bias that you're teaching yourself? It's those things that matter in this, because it is not predictable. It is a roller coaster, and you are alone and nobody's there to help you. How do you emotionally deal with that? Especially if you've been taught from age of 0 up to whatever, 18 or 30 or whatever it might be. The longer that you go, the more you've been taught. But you got to unlearn all these societal, cultural expectations. If you fit in this little box, you go to work from 8 to 5, you do this. What's about your, what about your benefits? What's your PTO? What's your sick leave? All these questions that everybody has. And has like painted this like perfect little picture of paradise of how you should be in life. And by the way, if you get married and have a kid, you better have job security. What's your next raise? All that stuff's off the table when you're an entrepreneur. 100% off the table.
Yeah. And that level of psychology is the key. It's critical to how you navigate all of those different things. I think about just from a psychological standpoint, that's going to determine whether or not a founder has the level of empathy to understand the problem effectively or fully, as opposed to, having that confirmation bias like you talked about. It's like, oh, well, my solution, I'm the smartest guy in the room, so here's my solution. You need it type of approach.
That's a really great point, right? The willingness to learn and to know that you're not right, it's like a lot of our success when it comes practically speaking about products and services was not what we came up with as a solution. We came up with it through listening during client meetings, and then you pivot. Then, hate to use that that cliche, but you do. You go to the next
Part of
meeting,
it, yeah.
you do the job, and things break down. Then you fix those, and then you just keep stacking. And that's why a lot of times it's that 12-year overnight success theory, because it took you a decade to really narrow down into this true solution to this problem. Right? The problem's always been there, but the solution's not always there. And it's really hard to come out of the gate with a solution that's really attacking that. That usually doesn't happen. Even with the big companies that we see great successes with, I mean, they're most likely have a big history at the beginning of where they they started out with the solution, but they ended up with something completely different that made them huge. And you can look at that with like a lot of folks like Airbnb and other ones, but we, for some reason, all want the fastest, easiest, path to riches, and it doesn't exist.
It's not there.
And if it does, it's most likely ripping somebody off.
Oh yeah, or illegal. Bank robbery. Yeah, and that's part of the process of we talked about the folks that kind of alluded to the folks that come to us for consulting. They're almost entirely at idea stage to come to Startup Junkie. So part of that homework that we give them is to go out, talk to 100 people who are within their idea of what their customer is, to have those discussions on the front end before they get, we have folks that come to us, oh, well, we've already signed this 3-year lease and we've already done XYZ. And it's like, have you talked to anybody?
Yeah.
So getting them to do some of that tough work up front to test those assumptions and test their theories and test their, ideas of themselves and their solution.
Yeah. It's like you're trying to get them to critically think, because you guys can see down the road of the devastating consequences.
Try to kill it on the front end.
Exactly. Yeah, you try to squash it out. It's funny, like I was talking about it in one of my recent podcasts, but isn't it interesting like how entrepreneurism is now this new thing? But it's sexy, right? And it's like everybody's like, oh, I can be an entrepreneur. But if you rewind before the 1900s and the 1800s and before, everybody was a freaking entrepreneur. It was like the normal thing, and you did it to survive, right? And now it's like, no, you do it to be creative and to, and to embrace this and to make a lot of money. No, like, I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you should be thinking like it's a survival. It's what you do to survive. It's what you do. Like you're, another good indication is like, I didn't know I was an entrepreneur from like age 21 to like 27. I had even gone through a business before I realized what the hell's an entrepreneur. No, I just knew that I didn't really want to. It wasn't that I didn't want to work or couldn't work with somebody, is that I was limited by the work, by the job position. Like I had so much excitement to go do this market thing, and the job was actually handcuffs for me, right? And I didn't have the freedom. And so what that did, and then I would always hear people say no, and I hate the word no, or the word no would just, if I told you my idea and you're like, man, this isn't going to work, I'd be like, watch me prove it.
Watch me.
Like I'll see you in 2 years. And, and so that's a lot of the mentality, but we've gone from entrepreneurism society to a very rigid career-based society for the last 100 years. And now we're trying to find our way out of it again, but we're acting like that it's something new. But really, if you go back to the 1800s, there's a lot of, teachings there of just start something up, build small, figure out your market, build, all these little fundamentals that like we're having to reteach people because they've been taught for 100 years, something completely different, a cultural system, a Roman Empire, of where there's few that control.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. Well, it seems it's wild. But it seems like you've learned a lot over your entrepreneurial career. The way we kind of like to wrap these things up, if you can go back in time, talk to younger Eric, give him a piece of advice, what would you tell him?
That 21-year-old that didn't see himself as an entrepreneur.
I would tell myself like, no one's going to be here to help you. You're alone, bro. Because I spent so much time seeking that help, expecting that help, wanting that help, dreaming of that help. I would. And maybe it was, I can tell you like, ignorance is bliss in a lot of ways, right? Because there wasn't a pathway. I was just driving, and I learned my lessons along the way. But my ignorance allowed me to do some pretty ridiculous things and meet some really awesome people along the way that I just looked up to, and I was hoping they could help me, but they really couldn't. But I did waste a lot of energy with that expectation. building presentations, for a huge project, that probably had no chances to win, not because we didn't have a solution or they didn't have a problem, is because the person in that role was very self-centered, career-minded. They're trying to climb a ladder.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking to the wrong person,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, I'm looking for that person to help me. I get all this excitement from it and so many letdowns. I mean, there's 99% failure rate
Mm-hmm.
versus the 1% success rate. Like, and so I would tell myself to like just really buckle up a little bit better, like depend on myself, like trust in myself and my ideas or my direction, versus trying to like find this perfect scenario that's the right way. It's amazing. Like there is no right way.
No golden on ramp.
There isn't.
Yeah.
And we can paint it all we want to, but it's really, it really just comes down to just having that willingness to continue to be resilient and drive forward. That was about my experience.
Yeah. That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Well, if
Hopefully.
anyone listening wants to learn more about you or podcast videos or AdFury, where should they go?
Probably LinkedIn would be a good one. Just look at my name, Eric Howerton, and then you can kind of get redirected to those from there. But I mean, AdFury.ai, podcastvideos.com, bigtalkaboutSmallBusiness.com, right?
Yeah.
So like go check those out. We definitely have a lot going on. So I'm always happy to chat.
Yeah. We'll make sure to add them on the show notes for you.
Yeah.
Get a little pop up.
There you go, man.
Some fireworks,
make me
maybe.
famous. I'm depending on you guys to help me be successful. So, I need that.
Relying on others, right? Yeah, exactly.
No, I appreciate you guys having me in.
We appreciate you making the time coming
absolutely.
down.
I feel like it's a good meeting because I talk so much,
No, this is a fantastic episode.
My favorite episodes from the guest, does a lot of talking. No, seriously.
Says that to everybody.
Yeah. Well, now I want to grab coffee and solve some of the world's problems
That's
with
right.
you too. Let's talk about some journalism and some.
Yeah. On that, I mean, I know we're trying to close up, but on that, don't think that you need a special qualification. You don't. You really need just yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You need that time. It doesn't matter if you're a CPA. It doesn't matter if you're a freaking stock trader. It doesn't matter if you're, a strategic genius. Like it takes all of your being in entrepreneurship. And all of your being, you need to know all nook and crannies. And if you study yourself, like that's where your confidence is. Be self-confident, and almost to a fault. It's better to be a narcissist than not.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there's
y'all didn't really catch on to that. Narcissism is the answer to
to an extent. But
no.
Well, I think a level of self-awareness too. Even if there are folks that I'm sure people would consider obviously narcissists that are effective in the maybe certain stages, maybe the earlier stages of kind of building a company because they've got that level of vision or whatever. But for anybody, just having, to your point about having that kind of, alone time with yourself, baking in that self-awareness of yourself, because, if you don't, then you're going to be that narcissist that doesn't do very well.
That's right. I'll be honest with you. Like I got a place that I go to on basically a daily basis. And I might not be studying my book, but I am just sitting there thinking. And you need to find that place where you can critically think and recap what you've done. And it's not watching YouTube or doing social and trying to be the industry expert every day. Be your self expert and understand your emotions and what you're dealing with, and like really contemplate the fears that are driving you. A lot of it's fear based, right? Like you're really just battling fears. And I have fear, 100%. But my thing is I'm trying to, love the quote I've been hearing recently. The best way to deal with fear is to turn around and face it. And you face it head on and recognize you have that. Like there's a lot of this subconscious, this intuition that's driving your decisions. That's the thing to teach about entrepreneurship, right? Like you are being driven by something deeper, and that's not conscious, but what is that? And what has triggered the drive of that? And if you don't have the time with yourself to introspect that a little bit, you will follow emotions and make devastating decisions. Everybody buys off fear for the most part, or greed or jealousy. So there's some sort of emotion behind that stuff. And I think it's what I have learned through all this stuff is is to investigate that and then to trust the positive side of it, recognize the negative side of it. And that's really the best answer I have. Because I honestly can't tell you if any of the companies I'm in and part of right now are going to be successful, but I believe that they will be. And a lot of that's up to me, not freaking, internally combusting.
Yeah. Well, that's some great advice for all our audience. Yeah, we could talk for another hour. I think we might need to wrap it up. I know we got some busy schedules, but
appreciate you again.
Yeah, seriously, thank you so much for making the trip up here and talking to us.
And I'll let y'all close it out. I won't keep going for.
I think that's a wrap.
I think we could just call it.
Thank y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming in. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share with a friend. Subscribe and review because it matters to us and we want to hear from you. If you're interested in learning how to work with us, check out the information below. See you next week.